The crystal wine glass felt cool against my palm as I gazed across the table at my wife's smile. 10 years of marriage had done little to diminish Laura's beauty. If anything, time had only refined it. Her dark hair cascaded over bare shoulders, and the candlelight played across the emerald necklace I'd given her that morning. A necklace worth more than what most people made in a year. "Happy anniversary, darling," I said, raising my glass. The champagne bubbles danced, catching golden reflections from the chandeliers of Le Bernardin, the most exclusive restaurant in the city. Laura's smile widened, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'd become familiar with that particular smile over the past few months, a facade hiding something deeper, something darker. "To 10 beautiful years," she replied, clinking her glass against mine. Beautiful years. Yes, they had been once. Before the late-night texts, she thought I didn't notice. Before the unexplained absences and the scent of unfamiliar cologne. Before my business partner began canceling our Thursday golf games with increasingly transparent excuses. I took a sip of champagne, savoring its crisp bite. $200 a bottle, but tonight was special. Tonight was the culmination of months of planning, of quiet preparation while I watched my marriage crumble before my eyes. "I have a surprise for you," Laura said, checking her watch with poorly concealed anticipation. I smiled. "Really? I thought the surprise was this dinner." "Oh no, Michael," she said, her voice honeyed with false affection. "Something much better." The maitre d' approached our table, a tall figure following closely behind. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. Eric Morgan, my business partner of 15 years, the man who had stood as my best man at our wedding, the man who had been sleeping with my wife for the past 6 months. "Sorry I'm late," Eric said, sliding into the chair beside Laura. He didn't look at me, focusing instead on adjusting his cufflinks, the platinum ones I'd given him for his 40th birthday. Traffic was a nightmare. I maintained my smile, watching as Laura's hand briefly touched Eric's before retreating to her lap. Eric, what an unexpected pleasure. Laura cleared her throat. "Michael, I wanted Eric here for this conversation. I thought it would be appropriate." I took another sip of champagne, feeling its warmth spread through my chest. "By all means." There was a moment of silence as our appetizers arrived. Foie gras for Laura, escargot for me, and a seafood platter for Eric. I noticed he'd ordered without looking at the menu. He must have known what he wanted in advance, just like he'd known exactly what he wanted when he set his sights on my wife. "Michael," Laura began once the server had left, "there's no easy way to say this." "Then say it directly," I replied, cutting into my escargot with deliberate precision. "I've always appreciated your straightforwardness, Laura." She exchanged a quick glance with Eric, who gave her an encouraging nod. That small gesture told me everything I needed to know about their dynamic, about the conversations they must have had leading up to this moment. "I want a divorce," she said, her voice suddenly firm. "Eric and I have fallen in love." I set down my fork, dabbed my mouth with my napkin, and looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman I'd met 12 years ago at a charity gala, who had laughed at my terrible jokes and challenged my perspectives. The woman who had nursed me back to health after my car accident 5 years ago, who had once shared my dreams. "I see," was all I said. Laura looked disappointed by my response, as if she had expected, perhaps even hoped for, an outburst, a scene, something to justify what she was about to do. "There's more," she continued, pulling a manila envelope from her purse. "These are divorce papers. My lawyer has already drawn them up." Eric shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but remained silent. His role in this ambush was clear. He was the muscle, the reinforcement, in case I decided to make things difficult. Laura slid the envelope across the table. "I want half of Thompson Enterprises." Now there it was, the real reason for this public setting, for the timing, for everything. Not just my personal assets, but my company. The business I'd built from nothing, working 18-hour days while Laura complained about my absence. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Half the company?" I repeated, opening the envelope and scanning the first page of the document. "That seems excessive for a decade of marriage." "I've been by your side through everything," she said, her voice rising slightly. "I've entertained your clients, hosted your business dinners, supported you when you were working all those late nights." Late nights that had given her ample opportunity to entertain Eric, no doubt. "And I deserve compensation for what I've put into building your success," she finished. I flipped through the pages. The document was comprehensive, detailing the division of our assets, custody arrangements for our 2 children, primary custody to Laura, of course, and a substantial monthly alimony payment. But the crown jewel was the demand for 50% ownership of Thompson Enterprises, the tech company I'd founded before I even met Laura. "Eric will be stepping in as co-CEO," Laura added, as if it were an afterthought. "We think it's best for the company's future." I looked at Eric, who finally met my gaze. "You've been quiet, old friend." He cleared his throat. "This isn't personal, Michael. It's business." I almost laughed. "Sleeping with my wife isn't personal?" Laura interjected. "Don't make this ugly, Michael. Just sign the papers, and we can all move forward with our lives." I stared at the document again, at the stark reality of betrayal laid out in legal terminology. All those months of suspicion confirmed in black and white. The late-night office meetings, the business trips that required both of them to attend, the text messages I'd seen previewed on Laura's phone when she thought I wasn't looking. "And if I refuse?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Laura's expression hardened. "Then we go to court, and everything comes out. Your offshore accounts, the tax shelters, the deal with Meridian Tech that the FTC might find interesting." She leaned forward. "I've kept track of everything, Michael. Every shortcut, every gray area. Sign now and we keep it civil. Refuse, and I'll make sure you lose everything anyway." I studied her face, searching for any trace of the woman I'd married. There was none. Just cold determination and the certainty of someone who believed they held all the cards. "I see you've thought of everything," I said, reaching for my inside pocket. "I learned from the best," she replied. I removed my Mont Blanc pen, another anniversary gift, this one from 5 years ago, and uncapped it. The weight felt substantial in my hand as I signed each page where indicated, my signature flowing across the paper with practiced ease. When I finished, I slid the document back across the table. "There, it's done." Laura looked almost disappointed at my capitulation. Perhaps she had expected more resistance, more drama. She quickly recovered, tucking the document back into her purse. "Thank you for making this easy," she said. "I'll have my assistant collect my things from the house tomorrow." I nodded, raising my glass for one final toast. To new beginnings. We finished our meal in strained silence, the exquisite food turning to ash in my mouth. Not from grief or shock, but from the effort of maintaining my composure, of not revealing my hand too soon. When the bill came, I paid without comment, one final expense in a marriage that had cost me far more than money. As we stood to leave, Laura hesitated. "I am sorry it ended this way, Michael." "Are you?" I asked. "We had good years," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Yes," I agreed. "We did." I watched them walk away together, his hand on the small of her back, a gesture that once would have cut me to the quick. Now I felt nothing but a cold, calculating patience, the kind of patience that comes from knowing exactly what lies ahead. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Laura moved out, taking only her personal belongings as promised. The children, away at boarding school in Switzerland, were told that their mother and I were taking some time apart. I spoke to them every day, careful to maintain normalcy amid the chaos. On the surface, I appeared to be a man accepting his fate with quiet dignity. I went to the office, attended meetings, signed documents. If my employees noticed anything amiss, they were tactful enough not to mention it. Eric took a sudden vacation, presumably to avoid facing me in the hallways. Laura called once, asking why her access to the company accounts had not yet been granted. "These things take time," I told her. "Legal processes, you understand." She didn't push the issue. She thought she had won, after all. Why rush the victory lap? On the morning of what was to be Laura's triumphant return to Thompson Enterprises, this time as half-owner, I arrived early. The corner office that had been mine for 15 years looked the same as always. The glass desk, the view of the city skyline, the photographs of my children on the credenza. I had removed the photo of Laura and me the day after our anniversary dinner. Jeffrey Winters, the company's chief legal counsel and my friend of 20 years, arrived at 9 o'clock sharp, carrying a leather portfolio. "Everything's in place," he told me, laying out documents on the conference table. "Are you sure about this, Michael?" "There's no going back." I nodded. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. At 10 o'clock, my assistant announced Laura's arrival. She entered with the confidence of someone who owned the place, which, according to the divorce papers I had signed, she did. Or so she thought. Eric followed close behind, looking considerably less comfortable. His eyes darted around the office, taking in the familiar surroundings from a new perspective. "Good morning, Laura. Eric." I gestured to the seats across from me. "Please, sit down." Laura took her seat with a triumphant smile. "I've brought the signed divorce decree. Everything's official now." "Congratulations," I said, my voice neutral. "I've asked Jeffrey to join us to facilitate the transition." Jeffrey nodded, his expression professionally blank. He slid a folder across the table to Laura. "Mrs. Thompson, or should I say Ms. Harrington now, there are some documents you should review before we proceed." Laura frowned, opening the folder. "What's this? More paperwork? I thought everything was settled." "Not quite," I said. "There are a few details about the company that weren't covered in our divorce agreement." She began reading, her expression changing from confusion to disbelief to outrage as she turned each page. Eric leaned over her shoulder, his face paling as he absorbed the information. "This can't be legal," Laura finally sputtered, throwing the papers down. "The company is bankrupt? And in a trust for the children? What the hell is this, Michael?" I leaned back in my chair. "It's exactly what it looks like. Thompson Enterprises was transferred into an irrevocable trust for our children 3 weeks ago. The company you now half-own filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection the following day." Eric stood up, his face flushed with anger. "You can't do this. The divorce agreement—" "The divorce agreement," I interrupted calmly, "grants Laura half of Thompson Enterprises as it existed at the time of signing, and at that time, it was a bankrupt shell company with no assets." Laura's eyes narrowed dangerously. "I'll take you to court. I'll expose everything." Jeffrey cleared his throat. "I wouldn't advise that, Ms. Harrington. If you turn to page 12 of your divorce agreement, you'll find a clause stating that any fraudulent claims against Thompson Enterprises or attempts to litigate based on false pretenses will result in a penalty of $5 million, payable directly to Mr. Thompson." "I never agreed to that," Laura exclaimed. "But you did," Jeffrey replied, pulling out another document, a copy of the divorce papers with Laura's signature clearly visible at the bottom of the page in question. "Right here." Laura grabbed the document, scanning it frantically. "This wasn't in the papers I had drawn up." "No," I agreed. "It was in the papers you signed. Did you really think I wouldn't have my own lawyer review the documents before signing them?" The realization of what had happened began to dawn on her face. The papers she had brought to the restaurant had been replaced with my own version, identical in every way except for the additional clauses hidden within the dense legal text. clauses she had never bothered to read before filing, confident in her victory. "You switched the papers," she whispered. "I protected myself," I corrected her. "Just as you tried to do." Eric sank back into his chair, his face ashen. "What about my position?" "Our agreement." "Your agreement with Laura means nothing," I said, turning to him. "You have no legal standing with this company. In fact, as of this morning, you no longer have any position here at all." I slid another document across the table. "This is notification of your termination, effective immediately. Security will escort you to your office to collect your personal belongings." Eric stared at the paper in disbelief. "You can't fire me. I'm a partner." "You were a partner," I corrected him. "Your partnership agreement included a morality clause. Section 8, paragraph 3, if you'd like to review it. Engaging in an affair with the CEO's wife constitutes a clear violation." Laura stood up, her hands shaking with rage. "This isn't over, Michael. I'll fight this." "You're welcome to try," I replied. "But before you do, you might want to read the final document in that folder." She flipped to the last page, her eyes widening as she scanned its contents. "These are bank statements?" "Correct. Your bank statements, to be precise, showing regular transfers to offshore accounts over the past 6 months, accounts that coincide with certain competitive information being leaked to our rivals." I leaned forward. "Industrial espionage is a federal crime, Laura. One that carries significant prison time." The color drained from her face. "You can't prove anything." "Can't I?" I gestured to the documents. "Those transfers align perfectly with the dates of the leaks, and I have email correspondence between you and representatives from Axiom Technologies discussing company information." This was a bluff. I had no such emails. But Laura's reaction told me everything I needed to know. Her guilty conscience filled in the blanks. "You were setting me up," she whispered, "all this time." "No, Laura, you set yourself up. I merely ensured I wouldn't go down with you." Eric stood again, his lawyer's instincts finally kicking in. "We're leaving. We'll be in touch through our attorneys." "Of course," I said pleasantly. "Jeffrey will be happy to receive any communications." As they turned to leave, I added, "Oh, and Laura? The children will be staying with me full-time now. The trust stipulates that any guardian must be employed or financially stable, given your current situation." The look she gave me could have frozen hell itself, but beneath the hatred, I saw something else. Fear. The realization that she had gambled everything on a plan that had catastrophically backfired. "Goodbye, Laura," I said as the door closed behind them. Jeffrey waited until they were gone before speaking. "That went about as expected." I nodded, feeling a hollow victory. "Have security clear out Eric's office and change all the access codes immediately." "Already done," he assured me. "What about the children? Do they know yet?" I shook my head. "I'm flying to Switzerland next week to tell them in person. They deserve that much." Jeffrey gathered his papers, hesitating before asking, "Was it worth it, Michael? All of this?" I looked out the window at the city below, thinking of the life I had built and nearly lost. It wasn't about worth, Jeffrey. It was about justice. After he left, I sat alone in my office, surrounded by the empire I had protected. The victory felt both complete and empty. I had won, yes, but at the cost of discovering the true nature of the people I had trusted most, people I had loved. I picked up the phone and dialed a familiar number. "Dr. Sullivan's office," a voice answered. "This is Michael Thompson. I'd like to schedule an appointment for grief counseling." The receptionist paused. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Thompson. When would you like to come in?" I looked at the empty chair where my wife had sat just minutes before. "As soon as possible." 6 months later, I stood in the doorway of our Swiss chalet, watching as Emma and James played in the snow. My 13-year-old daughter was attempting to teach her 10-year-old brother how to build the perfect snowman, their laughter carrying across the pristine white landscape. The divorce had been finalized without further incident. After consulting with her own lawyers, Laura had realized the futility of fighting my countermeasures. The evidence of her industrial espionage, which had indeed been real, though not as extensive as I had implied, was enough to ensure her cooperation. She had settled for a modest alimony payment and visitation rights with the children, rights she exercised irregularly at best. Last I heard, she was living in a small apartment in the city, working for a competing firm at a fraction of her expected salary. Eric had moved to the West Coast, his reputation in our industry effectively destroyed. The new Thompson Enterprises, legally restructured after emerging from strategic bankruptcy, was thriving. The trust ensured that my children's future was secure, while allowing me to continue running the company I had built. The betrayal had cost me, but not everything. My phone buzzed with a text message. Dr. Sullivan checking in after our last session. Remember what we discussed. Healing isn't linear. I smiled slightly, typing back, "One day at a time." Emma waved from the yard, her face flushed with cold and excitement. "Dad, come see our snowman!" I slipped the phone back into my pocket and stepped out into the snow. The bitter cold felt cleansing somehow, a reminder that even the harshest winters eventually give way to spring. "Coming, sweetheart," I called back, walking toward my children, the only true wealth I had ever possessed. As I helped them put the finishing touches on their lopsided snowman, I realized that Laura had been wrong about one fundamental thing. Success wasn't measured in company shares or corner offices. It was measured in moments like these, moments of genuine connection, of trust that remained unbroken. "What should we name him?" James asked, adjusting the carrot nose. "How about Phoenix?" I suggested. Emma looked thoughtful. "The bird that rises from the ashes?" I nodded, surprised by her knowledge. "Exactly. Sometimes the best things come after everything has burned away." She smiled, leaning against me in a spontaneous hug. "I like that, Dad." Over their heads, I gazed at the mountains in the distance, their peaks solid and unchanging against the clear blue sky. Like those mountains, I had weathered the storm, remaining standing when the clouds cleared. Not unscathed, certainly, but unbroken. And in the end, that was victory enough. My office in the rebuilt Thompson Tower felt different now, brighter somehow, though the furnishings remained largely the same. Perhaps it was the absence of secrets that lightened the atmosphere, or perhaps it was simply that I no longer carried the weight of suspicion and betrayal on my shoulders. Jeffrey knocked on the open door, entering with a tablet in hand. "The quarterly reports are in. We're up 17% from last year." I nodded, unsurprised. "The Nakamura deal came through then?" "Signed this morning. They were impressed with the new security protocols." He hesitated. "There's something else. Laura's requested a meeting." My hand paused over the document I'd been reviewing. "What for?" "She didn't say. Just that it was important." I considered refusing. There was nothing left to discuss between us, no loose ends that required tying up. The divorce was final, the custody arrangement settled. Yet curiosity, perhaps my greatest weakness, won out. "Schedule it for Thursday. Neutral territory, that cafe near the park." Jeffrey nodded. "Will do." He turned to leave, then paused. "Be careful, Michael. You've rebuilt everything so well." "I'm not worried," I assured him, though perhaps I should have been. Thursday arrived with unseasonable warmth, a hint of spring in the air despite the calendar still showing winter. I arrived at the cafe early, selecting a corner table with a view of both the door and the park beyond. Old habits die hard. Laura entered precisely on time, looking both familiar and strange. She had lost weight, and the designer clothes I had once funded had been replaced with more modest attire. But she carried herself with the same confidence, the same assurance that had first attracted me to her all those years ago. "Michael," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." "You said it was important," I replied, studying her face for clues. "I assume it concerns the children?" She shook her head. "No, they're fine. I spoke with Emma yesterday." A brief shadow crossed her face. "She seems happy." "She is," I confirmed. "They both are. Adjusting well to the new normal." Laura nodded, fidgeting with the paper napkin. This uncharacteristic nervousness piqued my interest. In all our years together, I had rarely seen Laura anything but composed. "I'm leaving the city," she finally said. "I've been offered a position in Toronto. Fresh start, away from everything." I nodded slowly. "Congratulations. Will this affect your visitation schedule?" "That's part of why I wanted to talk. I'm not going to contest the custody arrangement anymore. You were right. The children are better off with you." She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "I've been selfish, Michael. For years. With them. With you." I remained silent, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Laura had never been one for sudden self-awareness or admission of fault. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she continued. "What I did, what Eric and I did, was unforgivable. But I wanted you to know that I understand now. What I threw away—" "Why tell me this?" I asked, genuinely curious. "What difference does it make at this point?" She sighed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Maybe none. But before I leave, I needed to acknowledge the truth, at least once. I've spent the past 6 months blaming you, hating you for outsmarting me. But the reality is, you were just protecting yourself from what I'd become." I considered her words, searching for the manipulation, the angle. There always had been one before. But all I saw was exhaustion and a glimmer of something that might have been genuine regret. "What happened to Eric?" I asked, though I already knew most of the story. "He left after the bankruptcy, claimed I'd misled him about the company's value." She laughed bitterly. "Turns out loyalty wasn't his strong suit after all." There was a certain poetic justice in that, I thought, but didn't say. "For what it's worth," she continued, "the company information I shared wasn't significant, just enough to seem valuable to Axiom, to get their money." "It doesn't matter now," I said, and found that I meant it. The betrayal had been complete from the moment she decided to leak anything at all. The specifics were irrelevant. Laura reached into her purse and withdrew an envelope. "This is for the children. It's not much, but I want them to have it. A trust fund of my own, you might say." A ghost of a smile crossed her lips. "Considerably smaller than yours." I took the envelope, tucking it into my jacket without opening it. "I'll make sure they get it." "And this," she added, sliding a small velvet box across the table. "The emerald necklace you gave me for our anniversary. It should go to Emma someday." I stared at the box, remembering the night I had given it to her, the false smiles and hollow words. "Keep it," I said. "Sell it for your fresh start." She shook her head. "I don't want anything that reminds me of what I destroyed, Michael. Please take it." After a moment's hesitation, I pocketed the box as well. "Is that all?" Laura seemed to deflate slightly, perhaps hoping for a different reaction. "Yes, that's all." I stood, laying enough cash on the table to cover both our untouched coffees. "Good luck in Toronto, Laura." She looked up at me, her eyes suddenly bright with unshed tears. "Do you think you'll ever be able to trust anyone again? After what I did?" The question caught me off guard, not because of its content, but because of its apparent sincerity. For a moment, I saw the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman who had once cared about my well-being, before ambition and greed had corroded her character. I trust my children, I said after a moment's consideration. I trust Jeffrey and a few others who stood by me. As for the rest, I shrugged. Time will tell. She nodded, accepting my answer. Goodbye, Michael. Goodbye, Laura. As I walked out of the cafe and into the bright afternoon, I felt a strange sense of closure. Not forgiveness. She had been right about that being impossible, but perhaps the beginning of moving beyond the bitterness that had driven me for so long. My phone rang as I reached my car. Emma's school, according to the caller ID. Mr. Thompson, this is Mrs. Winters from the academic committee. We wanted to let you know that Emma has been selected as a finalist for the National Science Competition. Her project on sustainable energy sources impressed the entire panel. I smiled, pride replacing the hollow feeling the meeting with Laura had left. That's wonderful news. When is the ceremony? Next month in Washington, D.C. Will you be able to attend? Absolutely, I said without hesitation. I wouldn't miss it for the world. After ending the call, I sat in my car for a moment, thinking about the future rather than the past. About Emma's bright mind and James's kind heart. About the company that would someday be theirs, secure and thriving. Laura had sought to take everything from me, yet in the end, she had taken nothing that truly mattered. The betrayal had changed me, certainly, hardened me in some ways, opened my eyes in others. But it hadn't broken me. I started the engine, turning toward home, my real home, not the empty mansion Laura and I had once shared, but the warm, chaotic apartment where my children and I had built a new life together. The emerald necklace sat heavy in my pocket, a reminder of what had been lost. But as I drove away from the cafe, I found myself thinking not of Laura's betrayal, but of Emma's eyes lighting up when she talked about her science project, of James's laughter as he built a lopsided snowman. Some losses, I realized, make room for greater gains. Some endings pave the way for better beginnings. And sometimes, the most complete revenge isn't about making others suffer, but about ensuring they can't prevent you from thriving. I took the long way home, enjoying the unexpected warmth of the winter afternoon, planning the trip to Washington in my mind, planning for a future that, despite everything, looked brighter than I could have imagined on that fateful anniversary night. A future that was mine, and mine alone, to shape. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.